Hello and welcome to the BESIG World blog. I'm Claire Hart from the BESIG online team, and I'm talking to John Paul Smith, who works at Live Language, a language school in Glasgow.
Hello.
Hi, John.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thanks. I've been looking forward to this.
Great. So, what kind of students do you get at Live Language? What countries do they come from? What contexts do they come from?
Well, taking the school as a whole, they come from all over the world. There isn't really a kind of corner of the earth that we don't get people from. But in terms of the kind of the bigger chunks of the nationality mix, we get quite a lot of students from Spain, quite a lot of students from the Middle East, and then after that is broken down into kind of many different little pieces. Most of our kind of business is putting students through the IELTS exam. Not specifically business orientated stuff. A very big part of the success of the business has been putting students through the IELTS exam to get them into UK university.
Oh, okay. But I think this is quite a typical situation for language schools in the UK, isn't it? The focus on IELTS.
I guess so,
right?
Yeah. A big part of the attraction, apart from working as hard as you can to be a good, a reputable school, I think a big part of the attraction is the UK education system in general. People are coming here and maybe using a language school or a similar institution as a kind of stepping stone to a university or a college. That's quite common.
Yep. But you also get people who are sent to you from companies, right, to improve their English?
Yes, we do. In the Languages for Business department, we get a lot of people who either pay for the tuition themselves or they have a sponsor, maybe the HR department, maybe the company. We get, again, quite a big nationality mix. It's really difficult to predict, harder to predict probably than the main school body, if you like. Last probably 2 years has seen quite a big influx of renewable energy companies and their native personnel into Scotland. So we've been teaching renewable energy engineers and all the kind of associated financial personnel that come with them. A couple of Spanish companies are places that we visit every day to teach.
Okay. So they're just there for a short time and then they go back to their working lives then?
Generally, it's not quite that. They tend to study on quite a long-term basis, maybe a class or two a week, basically on an indefinite basis, without a deadline. Within every kind of 6 month period, we maybe set targets like passing exams and things like that. But a couple of our bigger customers just work with us on a continuous basis. We don't really have a termination date, so that's pretty good. On top of that, we've got some part-time classes in the evenings and stuff, which are more fixed syllabus, a bit more appropriate to short-term students.
Okay. And do you have to teach much ESP, like technical English or financial English then?
Yeah, bits and pieces here and there. Financial English is definitely more common than things that you would call technical. There's an awful lot of the engineering personnel, for example, who, whilst they're first and foremost engineers in the old-fashioned sense, they just couldn't function without support for financial terminology, how to present it well, what type of language is typical, what type of language they can expect to discover, to have presented back to them. So the financial stuff's relevant to most of the executives we work with. The technical stuff is interesting. Remember me and you discussed it before, and occasionally you find that a student is presented to you by a company as some kind of technical worker, and that you're told to give them technical English, and upon needs testing them properly, you discover that it's the only thing they don't really need. In actual fact, their technical English is very good, but they can't follow a meeting, or they don't know how to have a conversation at the coffee machine. So we get a lot of that. That's a trend I've noticed.
Yeah, I also have some learners like that who are supposed to be doing technical English, But in reality, they, like you said, they need to be able to have a conversation with a visitor at lunch or something like that, and that's more of a pressing need for them, it seems. So
That's precisely my experience. It's accentuated by the fact that I'm dealing with students who have, moved here, and conversational competence is really urgent because they need it for the telephone. They need it to deal with the broadband engineer who's come to their home, the milkman, anything. The orientation and survival English is really quite high up the list of priorities. And again, the technical stuff is almost artificially high because they're using it every day. They've developed a kind of spike in their profile, whereas other basic skills are lacking, and you address that first if you can.
Okay. But I would think, compared to my learners in Germany, your learners should be more motivated, I would have thought, because, like you said, they have to deal with everyday life in English if they're working in Britain. Are they more motivated, do you think? Are they motivated?
Yeah, in my experience, very much so. You've touched on something that's probably the prime driver of that, is that they live here and there's no escape. If they don't fancy going to class, they would be crazy, because I understand in certain other European countries you get problems with kind of absenteeism and stuff. Maybe there's a very good language course in place, but actually getting people to come through the door is a bit of a challenge. But you're quite fortunate if you're based in Glasgow or wherever else. When it's a native language, you get people coming to you and asking for extra homework and hanging about at the end of the class, and all coming with a list of questions about stuff that's come up at work. So motivation, I'm probably spoiled for that. The guys are really always really into it and wanting to do more rather than less.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's nice. Well, I hope it always lasts. It's nice.
Yeah, I mean, I know some of my learners they sometimes have moments of demotivation from time to time. And then in these moments they say things like, oh, well, you know what, Claire, really, we should just all go and live in England or Britain or whatever, USA, an English-speaking country, for 6 months or a year, and then we would all speak perfect English. And I think, okay, it's not quite that simple. It's not quite that simple, is it?
No, I completely agree. It's not. We had a wave of engineers who came about 18 months ago, and they were all kind of genuine C1 level advanced students, really quite impressive, massive vocabularies, but I think they discovered on arrival here that they weren't quite as advanced as they thought they were, and interacting with native speakers all day was a completely different challenge to a 1 hour phone call a week and then just reading English the rest of the time. I think having to come and live in English and go home tired because of the drain on your energy is a completely different experience. Some of the guys and girls that arrived told me for the first few months they were going home absolutely exhausted because of the effort of listening to English all day.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I felt the same way when I first moved to Germany and started trying to speak German. I was just tired out. Yeah, but maybe sometimes, I don't know, I often felt when I was trying to learn German, I was so tired out by actually having to speak German every day, or trying to. I often didn't have that much motivation left to study, or sometimes some of the exercises I was doing in course books, for example, seemed a bit irrelevant because they seemed a bit sort of old-fashioned and not really relevant to my situation trying to speak German every day. Or do you find that? Do you find course books are not that relevant for your learners?
I agree passionately with what you just said. That's something I'm really, really a big believer in. Is I won't say eliminating the course book. I think it's a cheap and a kind of lazy shot to say that course books are a bad thing. And there's great stuff out there, but I think using it where it's relevant to what you found at the needs analysis stage, and not just plunging into a textbook. I think the tendency to do that's crazy, and I really dislike it. I'm a big believer in providing lots of audio material that can be referred to outside the classroom. I really dislike the culture of the classroom CD, where you do 15 minutes listening practice. I think it's crazy not to be using stuff that the students themselves can go home and look at on YouTube. There's all sorts of terrific resources now. It doesn't matter how scientific or technical the subject is. You look at the RSA Animates lectures. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're on YouTube. They've got their own channel. You've got TED Talks. You've got Big Think lectures and interviews. All of these things are really interesting, accessible, stimulating, even to a native speaker. It needn't be all about the English content. They're entertaining anyway. And I try to make these a cornerstone of classes wherever it's relevant, and really push guys to investigate these channels in their own free time.
That sounds good. I've started using a little bit some excerpts from BBC programs that I get on my BBC iPlayer app.
Oh, great! Which ones?
Well, recently there's been this program called Weekend Aristocrats.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen that.
No, I'll look it up. I haven't heard of it.
It's about these people who own stately homes or castles, and they rent out their stately home or castle for weddings. And but we listened or watched it just to expose them to different types of accents.
Oh yeah.
Different types of native speaker or British, specifically British accents, like the very posh voice, very posh upper class voice of the aristocrats, and some people from the northeast of England, and just there's a really wide range of accents there.
I think there is. It's great for proving that these things are actually quite evenly spread too. I think there's an awful lot of myths surrounding English accents in Britain about how in the south it's perfect. And anywhere north of London, it becomes really difficult to follow. It's really a nonsense. Britain's a patchwork of accents. We're all mutually intelligible. There's a few wee pieces of idiomatic language that people will have to learn if they turn up in a particular place and they want to understand people perfectly. But there's accents all over Britain, and the TV programmes are a great way to access that. And what you just mentioned is exactly what I'm talking about. Refer people to material that's online. Don't produce these CDs that people can't access at home. Refer people to material that's online that they will be interested in, that they'll have fun with, and they can use in their own free time. The BBC's a goldmine of material. I use it all the time. There's a particular documentary, The Blue Planet, the one about the oceans and marine life, and you only need to watch 5 minutes of it, and it's just amazing practice for listening to the comparatives and superlatives. The blue whale is the biggest, the oldest, the longest. All sorts of statistical information's in there, so you get to talk about width and depth and height and all of these kind of basic technical dimensions and concepts that are presented to you with amazing footage and really high quality production. So you're spoiled if you take the trouble to look, as you obviously have, and you get the benefit of it. How did your guys respond to the programme?
Well, they were really interested. It was something that, or I chose it with a group who I suspected would be interested in that kind of thing. I don't think all of my learners would be interested, but these were like a sort of group of middle-aged, more conservative people who like visiting castles and things like that when they go on holiday.
You should come to Scotland.
Well, one of them in this group is actually going to Scotland in a couple of months. So yeah, so they're I thought that they would like it, and they did. They did find it very interesting to hear the range of accents. I think they were surprised by the range. They found the upper class person very difficult to understand, and they found the people from
region.
Oh no, upper class English person. Yeah, they found him very hard to understand because he was so upper class.
Yeah.
And they found the people from Newcastle they found easier to understand.
Is that right? Very good to hear that. Very, very glad. That's a nice debunking of the myth. That's perfect.
Yeah, that's true.
How do you feel about games and stuff like that in the business of the technical class? Do you make much use?
Well, I think games can serve a purpose as long as they have a purpose.
Yeah, and
if you know what I mean. I don't think the purpose should be the teacher's feeling lazy and doesn't feel like teaching.
Yeah,
So let's just give them a game. But I think if you're using a game to achieve a valid learning aim, then why not? Some of my learners will actually say, oh, when I'm talking to them about what they would like to do in future lessons, they will sometimes explicitly mention we'd like to do games.
yeah.
We like learning through playing games. Can we do that? So then I'll definitely include it with them. Or if I have some classes of trainees where they tend to be quite young, maybe ranging between 18 and 22, and they seem to respond well to it as well, to games.
Do you think
Yeah.
do you find there's a difference in awareness levels about learning styles between the older learners and the younger learners?
Perhaps. Perhaps. It's difficult to say. I haven't really specifically noticed that, but I don't know. I don't think so. I think generally they all tend to lack awareness of their learning styles.
Yeah, I don't have any preconceived idea about that. I just had the idea in the moment there, but that's kind of what I've found too. There are a couple of terrific lectures about learning styles by Ken Robinson. One of them's on a RSA Animate series, and the other one's on the TED website. And I watched it with some really, academically high achieving people, and they were absolutely astonished at how interesting it was and how they'd never thought about these things before, even though they had, extremely successful academic track records themselves. It can be a wee bit of a revelation to people when they realise that they need to touch something to learn, or they need to hear something to learn, or whatever. I guess that's what, as far as games are concerned, that's something I keep an eye out for, is people who are anxious to get out of their chair and actually do something, or are touching and doing, as opposed to just listening and watching. If I detect that in the classroom, I try and bring a game in without necessarily calling it a game. I think sometimes if you say we're about to play a game, it kills it, so you just ask people to stand up and get on with it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what I find that works well pretty much with everybody is this what have we changed game, where maybe you've heard of it, I don't know.
No, I can learn this. This is good.
Okay, well, if you have, say you have a group with 5 people, for example, you ask 2 of them to go out of the room, and the other 3 stay in the room and make a certain number of changes. I think 5 is a good number. Ask them to make 5 changes. For example, they can move a picture, they can open a window, they could put a coat on, or maybe that would be quite obvious, but they could change something in their clothing, for example. Yeah, just generally do things so that the room is different. And then the other people come back in and they have to guess what the changes are using the present perfect.
Yeah.
Have you moved the plant? No, we haven't. Oh, I think you have moved the chair. I think you've moved that chair. So it can be a good way to practice the present perfect and go into more depth in vocabulary for things in a room or things in an office.
Yeah.
Or
That sounds great. I like that.
Thanks.
I'll use it first chance.
Okay, you can try it and tell me what you think.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's been really nice talking to you today,
Great talking
John.
to you too.
Thank you. And enjoy the rest of your day.
I will. Have a nice day. Thanks very much.
Thanks.